delay, and I think we are live. Paul Kelly, how's it going?
Not bad, Stetson. How are you today?
Awesome. Doing well. Just getting caffeinated on this Monday. I see that Nikki Savvy said he we go. I think they meant here we go. But yes, this is industry trends and opportunities. We've been doing these live streams with some folks at Enable. We are live indeed, Nikki. We've been doing these streams about once or twice a month now. And today we have Paul. Paul, why don't you give us a quick introduction to who you are and what you're up to over at Enable?
Hi, Stetson. Yes, so my name is Paul Kelly. I am a head nerd at Enable. I'm usually based in Cork in Ireland, but today I'm coming to you from a soundproof booth in our Lisbon office in Portugal. So my role kind of at Enable as part of the head nerd team tends to focus around things like automation, patch, scripting, security. But I suppose as the industry evolves and as our role here as head nerds at Enable evolves, we kind of are more, fingers on what's going on with the industry and obviously providing support and solutions to our partners and advice to our partners as well. So it's a kind of ever evolving role, which is very interesting as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And folks probably know me, but my name is Stetson Blake, founder of This is an IT Support Group, and I do some software dev stuff as well. But Paul, the topic today, of course, industry trends and opportunities, I hope will be super valuable for managed services providers, but also anybody just kind of working in IT to keep their thumb on the pulse, so to speak. So we have a variety of topics you sent over to me. Not this is canned. This will be super informal, but I think we should get right into it, Paul. The first kind of item we had was top technology growth areas for MSPs, and you got a lot of stuff on here. But where do we want to start there?
Yeah, I mean, so I suppose a lot of kind of what we see when we look at industry trends and opportunities is obviously based on research done by independent firms. So this is not necessarily stuff that Enable are seeing with our partners, but it tends to be more across the wider IT management and MSP industry as well. I think what jumps out to me here, Stetson, is the key to top growth areas that is envisioned over the next 3 years. And top of the list is managed endpoint services. I think why that's interesting, Stetson, is when I think particularly, I'm been kind of working for various forms or iterations of MSPs and how they've evolved over the last 25 years as such, kind of from starting off as break fix into almost the MSSP market now today. But a large portion of that time, the focus has very much been on server infrastructure and managing server infrastructure. But obviously, with the shift to the cloud and more cloud services, the reliance on server infrastructure has significantly decreased. So one of the top growth areas is actually managing and securing endpoints. And often endpoints can go overlooked because an MSP might feel them and say, look, if an endpoint goes down, we can just get a new endpoint and away they go again. But actually, understanding how that endpoint is running, what information is on that endpoint, is that endpoint secure, is that endpoint vulnerable, for example, these are all potential areas that we need to start looking at now as well. So it's a real key area for growth and opportunity. So, if your focus, I suppose, has always been kind of on the server and the network infrastructure, you could be leaving opportunities behind if you're not really honed in on endpoint management, because that's really a key area that we see in these reports as well.
For sure. And when we say endpoint, Paul, this is not servers. Is this workstations? Is
We're
this
talking,
anything?
yeah, I suppose, yeah, I should probably define that, Stetson. So we're talking workstations, laptops. We're talking what you're on now, what I'm on now, what most of us work on as such. I work, I'm lucky enough to work in a job that allows me to work remotely. Usually I work from home. Today I'm working in Portugal. I'm able to, drag my laptop and work for wherever I'm in the globe kind of scenario. So, flew out on Sunday morning, had a stopover over in the UK. At all points I can work along because I have my endpoint, and the endpoint ultimately is what allows me to do my job. So ensuring these are properly managed and maintained, and also secure, because I have access to certain information, I have access to certain infrastructures, for example. You have to have the right security involved in these endpoints as well. And that's why kind of endpoint security is another key area, Stetson, where we're going to see a lot of growth in the next 3 years as well. Kind of traditionally securing an endpoint by just deploying antivirus isn't enough on devices. There's far more things that we have to consider now when it comes to endpoint security. Obviously, we've talked about probably in the past things like switching from traditional AV to EDR, but also there should be you got to consider things like password management on an endpoint, access right management on an endpoint, for example. Should I be allowed run whatever scripts I want to run on my devices, or should I have to request elevated min privileges to do something like that? And what else can we put on endpoints to secure them? Do we need a web filtering solution, for example? Do we need an MDR solution, for example, to give us greater visibility in what's going on within these devices as well? So there's lots of opportunities, not only with the management of endpoints, but the security of endpoints. And if you think of the technology stack that is out there in terms of what an MSP or what an IT admin might traditionally manage, it's obviously servers, workstations, laptops, switches, routers, printers, firewalls. Of all those things that we mentioned, the one thing that's never going to go away is the endpoint. You're always going to have workstations and laptops. We might necessarily, printers are already on a decline, for example. Servers are on the decline. Network equipment is on the decline because more and more people are working remotely. But you'll always have the requirement to manage endpoints. So it's got to really kind of be a focus area for us moving forward.
Yeah, and of course, MSPs and IT professionals, as you mentioned, have a lot of stuff to manage. Endpoints have, I think, always kind of been one of those areas, and since this is industry trends, we could maybe guess as to why. I have some guesses on remote work driving this, and just different technology that's coming out, things like AI. Do you want to manage that on users' workstations? But I guess my main question here, Paul, is for folks that maybe aren't managing endpoints today. Where can they get started? Like, what's good software, either sponsored or not?
Well, obviously with remote monitoring and management solutions, to name one, Enable N Central, for example, or Enable Insight are always a great way to get started as such. I think probably, most people on here that are responsible for managing environments will have some solutions in place already. And, even though we may not have kind of focused on the endpoint management in the past, most kind of management solutions or remote management solutions obviously do endpoint management as part of them as well. So I can give all the ads for Enable products that you want, Stetson, but I would say kind of what I would first do obviously is review the tools that we have in-house already and see what limitations are there, and maybe solutions that are already in place have some form of management capabilities, but maybe not the right form of management capabilities to move forward. When we consider kind of, okay, we need to manage the endpoint, but we also need to secure the endpoint. We need to have to back up the endpoint. So what options are available there? And potentially, do we need to look at alternative solutions that might allow us greater flexibility as well? I think when it comes to managing environments, and particularly when you talk about managing endpoints, that always tends to be the biggest number of devices that you have to manage within any environment itself. So solutions that are scalable, but also you don't want to have 3 or 4 different solutions. Well, I certainly don't want to have 3 or 4 different solutions to allow me to manage and secure endpoints as such. So consolidation into products that afford you the ability to do not only the management aspect of it, but also the securing aspect of it as well is very important.
Yeah, for sure. And if folks are joining us live, why don't you comment in the YouTube comments here what RMM you're using today, or how are you managing your endpoints? But we'll keep moving on a little bit. Manage your endpoints, do security on them, keep things up to date. I think that's pretty obvious. But maybe one area that folks will also overlook is backup and disaster recovery. Why is that a opportunity or trend, and what can folks do about it?
Because obviously, when we talk about being able to avoid downtime and recover from an incident, for example, again, in the past we've had that kind of, we can back up the server. Very seldom did we actually do a whole lot of recovery testing, or actually have simulate a scenario where if something does go wrong, this is our disaster recovery plan. It's a very time-consuming process to actually do that. And even in more recent years, we have seen partners looking at kind of backup and disaster recovery plans, but it's still, to implement these is very time consuming. So if you have a mechanism where you can do this through automation, if your backup vendor or disaster recovery vendor can automate this for you and manage this for you, that frees you up to do other work as well. So it's great peace of mind to actually know that, like, obviously you hope that you're never going to have to use a disaster recovery plan, and everything's going to run smoothly. But with increased security threats, malicious actors out there, user error is always is a key one that's so hard to defend against. So you can have every endpoint management tool in place, and you can have every security tool in place, but if you have someone just absolutely messes up their device, for example, you're going to need to be able to recover from that as well. So any way you can automate that and manage that, and obviously give you that peace of mind that, yeah, we have these backups running, we are able to automate through recovery testing, obviously, to prove you that it's going to work. Also, obviously, being able to report on recovery testing, so that when we think of backups, backups are happening multiple times a day now. So being able to actually test all these backups to ensure that the one that we have is going to work, it's impossible. It's just going to take too many man hours to actually do that manually. So any form of managed backup and disaster recovery is another area where we can look at, offering services to our partners and our end users that necessarily they don't have today. And that's kind of what generates kind of these growth opportunities. If you're an MSP, you're already looking at management of devices, but how do you actually grow other revenue streams for the business and offer services maybe that your customers don't have today? If you're an internal IT department, if you are doing a lot of manual recovery testing, and or even manual recovery process when the situation arises, that's taking time from other resources that you could be spending that time on as well. So any form of automation is a huge growth opportunity there as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Wanted to highlight quick comment from Nikki Sabby. We are using Eventi ITSM for endpoint management, but we'll be moving to Intune. Tyler Blake dropped in where you use Manage Engine Endpoint Central. Business is so small it fits in within freeware version limit, compatible with Mac, which is what we use in our office. Super awesome to hear. Go ahead, drop some comments if you are live. But back on the topic of managed backup and disaster recovery. Obviously, many reasons to back up, but there's a great one just I'm looking at from Enable's website. Ransomware just can't win. Backups are encrypted, immutable, and isolated by default. As there's more malware, perhaps written by AI and ransomware things going on, it's nice to have peace of mind that you do have backups in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to do. Go for
Sorry,
it.
Stetson, but I
Sure.
was going to just say, like, it's a great point to make there about the kind of ransomware, because, like, when we think about backups in the past, we thought about, oh, someone has deleted a file or someone has overwritten a file, and that certainly does happen from time to time, but it's not I suppose, the driving force to why we need to have backup these days. It is another layer of security on your end users' devices as such, and that if if a device is compromised, and often that compromisation can happen through a phishing attack or a business email compromise attack, for example. They're getting more and more sophisticated. So having that managed backup solution in place that allows you for quick and easy recovery means, okay, worst case scenario happens, we clicked on something we shouldn't have done, we went to a website we shouldn't have gone to, you can recover very fast from that as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And I was just going to say, some of these topics we're covering on, these technology growth areas are kind of principles or foundations, I think, of what MSPs should be focusing on, or perhaps offering. As we talk about these too, I did want to give a plug, because I was looking that for many of these topics, Enable has lots of content and things that are free. You can just register and join. I saw tomorrow there's a Cove Master of Disaster Recovery. It looks super interesting. There's a link down below. Teaches you how to spin up recovery environments in choice of Hyper-V or VMware ESXi or in Microsoft Azure. Kind of understand critical recovery prerequisites, cybersecurity best practices, etc. So check that out. But we'll keep moving along here. Paul, I do see, and maybe this will tie in with our next topic, which is network security. But I do want to get this question from Matt. What would you recommend for network discovery tools or network monitoring currently using Lansweeper?
Okay. So this is, I suppose, is an area where I'm going to probably plug other organizations and not just Enable, but there are one of the better solutions that I've seen out there recently is the Ranger product from SentinelOne. Now, we do offer SentinelOne as part of our Enable EDR solution, but Ranger does an excellent job in network discovery and alerting and triaging on known devices that are discovered within an environment as well. Obviously, when you use RMM solutions, there is a way of, depending on the RMM solution you're using, you can obviously do network discovery jobs to pick up devices. But often, you then decide whether you want to import the device or not import the device as such. Having a solution that allows you to actually isolate a device or restrict a device on the network, and actually being alerted when new devices are detected within a network, for example, I think is very important, because again, it all comes down to the threats and the constant threats that we face on a day-to-day basis as such. People hacking into Wi-Fi's, people going into environments and plugging devices into networks, for example. Being able to be actually notified and alerted when new things have been detected, and obviously actually putting them in a state maybe where the new devices will not have network access until they're granted access, for example, is a great option as well. So certainly something Ranger does a great job there as well. In the wider scheme of things, if you want to look at kind of overall network security, MDR solutions obviously are the way to go, and actually being able to get a holistic view of everything that goes on within the environment.
And so that's managed detection and response, is that right?
That is managed detection and response, or extended managed detection and response. So EDR, MDR, SDR is actually a sales development representative here at Enable. They've got nothing to do with IT security, but there's so many DRs there these days now. It's almost hard to keep up with it as well. But with something like an extended management detection and response solution, you can look at the complete picture. One of my colleagues who's been on here many times, Stephanie Hammond, always talks about the layers of the onion when it comes to security, with the end user's device being in the center, and then all the kind of layers being different, functions and features and products that you can use to protect that, as such, from deploying patch management, deploying a DNS filtering solution, to having a firewall within the network as such. What an XDR or what an MDR solution allows you to do is ingest all that information, so that you can look for potential threats within the environment that not one single product will not necessarily protect against or detect against, but actually combining information from firewalls, combining information from endpoints, combining information from Azure or AWS or cloud services that are used as such. That information all combined allows you to identify threats and obviously stop threats before they become problematic for customers as well. So there's lots of opportunities there again to kind of expand the layer of services that you can offer to your customers, and obviously they tend to be great growth opportunities then as well. I think as MSPs, sometimes we can be I suppose, guilty of focusing on what's worked for us. And, I've always managed servers. I have a nice little business managing servers as such. But, maybe what you'll see is that your growth isn't as fast as it should be, or your growth isn't at the percentage that your competitors' growth is, because you're not moving into new areas as well. So we do have to be kind of open to new areas that we can explore. Um, Selling something new or providing a new solution is always more challenging than doing what you know and what you're good at. But it does lead to greater rewards as well, and it does allow you to start differentiating yourself from the competition as well. It's a hugely competitive market out there, so anything you can do that allows you to stand out from other solution providers out there is very important as well.
Yeah, and Paul, as we talk about all these different services that MSPs might be looking at, there's that great like phrase or word, land and expand sales model, right? So
Yeah.
perhaps MSPs can start with just endpoint security, get that kind of offering tuned up, and kind of have a cookie cutter process they deploy to every client, and then it starts looking into something like managed backup and discovery, network
Yeah,
security.
and I think what works particularly well in that particular case, then Stetson, as well, is looking at your customer base and understanding things like compliance and regulation for the verticals that they operate in as well. You want to have, when you think of a security offering, it shouldn't just be one product. Because I think what end customers become very wary of is what are you trying to sell me this month?
Sure.
So you can't always be going to them with, oh, you need this tool and you need that tool. So I'll sell you this tool this month. I'll say this tool this month. I'll say this tool this month, for example. Whereas if you sit down with your customers and say, look, you've seen the news, you've read the articles on the web, you know that the threat landscape is constantly evolving. This idea that it's never going to happen to me, that's long gone out the window. We see most attacks are actually targeting kind of small to medium enterprises, for example. So they tend to be the ones most vulnerable because they tend to not have the right solutions in place to protect against these attacks. So, if you're a bad actor, are you going to take, the easy money, or are you going to go try and work for your money as such? We all know the answer to that as well. So, what I always think works well is sit down with your partners and understand their industry, and actually have packages to say, look, what you need in the industry that you operate in is package A that contains, DNS filtering, EDR, some form of maybe MDR light, for example, as such. Whereas if you have customers in industries where there's a lot more compliance and regulation, so if you have, if you deal with, partners that might be in healthcare, for example, where there's, far more personal identifiable information, might be government agencies, could be local authority agencies, for example. There's probably a lot more regulations in there as such, and often, bad actors will target businesses that operate with government agencies as a way of accessing information via the back door, as you say as well. So you want to make sure that you offer the right solutions to your partners, and make sure that they're not the cause of a breach, on a larger scale as a result of using your customers' access to other information as well.
Yeah, I love that. In other words, and I'll give a +1 to this: talk to your customers,
Yeah.
stay abreast of what their issues are, like do deep dives, and stay close, and learn, and
Yeah.
then offer a solution to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
explain to them why you have these offerings. The great line, I can't remember who said it first now, so I can't give them the credit, but change from I have something to sell you to I have something to tell you. And
Oh,
we're all really informed these days. We're all big boys and big girls. We can all make our own minds up. But sometimes we lack the right information. So, if we sit down and we have that conversation, so that this is what's happening today, these are the mechanisms that you can take to actually protect against it. You're more likely to listen to someone who has that kind of grown-up conversation with you than you saying, buy this off me, buy that off me as well. That doesn't work. That sales motion, I don't think, works in this day and age as well.
for sure. Yeah, we'll briefly touch. We talked about some of these foundations of growth areas for MSPs, and we covered network security, but there's also cybersecurity managed services, which we talked about a bit. But there was a statistic here: sales growth is expected to rise from 80 to 90% of partners, influenced by complexities of cyber threats, compliance requirements, and data breach liability concerns. Any comments there, Paul?
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose if we look year on year, in terms of these trends and these reports, the fact that it's grown from that, 9 out of 10 managed service providers now do anticipate growth in cybersecurity means that more and more people are waking up for it. So like that, it's almost everyone is conscious of this now as well. So hopefully that will result in better security measures being offered to partners as well. And obviously things like compliance is really driving this as well, and also cyber insurance policies. Insurance companies love selling policies, and when we think about it, and we think about it from an MSP's perspective, or even an internal IT management, if we take out a security policy, insurance companies, and I hope there's no insurance companies on the webinar here today, but they love selling a policy, but they're not so fond of actually paying out in that policy when it comes to actually claiming against it as such. They'll always find ways and opportunities around that. So a lot of these cyber insurance policies actually require advanced cybersecurity services to be in place in order for you to actually make a claim against that policy in the event of something happening within the environment then as well. So all these things in the industry that are happening at the moment is actually helping to drive more cybersecurity services to the end customer as a result of it as well. So I don't know what the other 10% of managed services providers are doing. Maybe they're the old stuck in the mud guys that are kind of sticking their head in the sand and hoping nothing will happen. But it does look at this stage that kind of the majority of the industry is kind of woken up to kind of say, yeah, this is an area of growth going forward for us.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll encourage folks. I think it's always a good business model to keep kind of up to date on compliance requirements and different legislative stuff, laws that are happening, where you might be able to provide some value to clients. But Paul, let's keep moving. I want to talk about challenges for MSPs, and I think there's a lot, but we've got a few to talk about today. One that's in my opinion, the biggest and most important lifeblood is new customer acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, like, how do particularly, with MSPs, how do you differentiate yourself from existing customers? It's always a tricky one. Approaching the conversation with prospects differently than that what we've all traditionally done in the MSP market is a great way of differentiating yourself, offering something that others don't offer. So we touched on MDR already, but not many MSPs are actually offering MDR at the moment as a service as such. Often, MDR actions are carried out by SOCs, for example, and that could be very cost prohibitive, particularly for smaller to medium size MSPs as well. So they actually to leverage a service and a third party that can do that is very important as well. You don't want to be kind of when it comes to new customer acquisition, I don't think you need to be kind of going in and and tearing apart the old guy or looking for holes in the previous supplier as such. You want to be going in and open with your potential customers. And showing them what you're doing differently, maybe that your competitors aren't doing at the moment as well. So it's always going to be a challenge. I think kind of I've looked at these kind of industry trends reports for the last few years now, and new customer acquisition is always top of the list. But there are lots of things you can do to kind of to start standing out. Another thing that I really like to do with kind of helping a new customer acquisition is look at your existing customer base and see, do you have any verticals that you support today, and then look for opportunities. Is there a business group around that? So if you have a bunch of architects on your book, for example, is there a regional architect group that has a meeting once a month, or a lunch once a month, or once a quarter, for example? Offer your services to go out and talk to these people. They're always looking for guest speakers. If you can stand up in front of a room and there's 100 people in that room and 5 of them are your customer, 95 of them are not your customers, and it's a great opportunity to reach out to people. Yes, it requires a little bit of time, but it's a great way of you have inbuilt advocates already in the room for you then as well, because then actually we use them for our IT management today, and they're very good as well. So lots of things you can do. I probably could talk a whole hour about new customer acquisition, but other areas and other challenges then, Stetson, tends to be around staff upskilling. How do we get the right training, and how do we ensure that the staff have the right knowledge to move forward. It's a difficult one to deal with, actually. I mean, I'm not going to go into the top secret reason I'm in Portugal this week, but we are having discussions in a room, and one of the things that we talk about is you can't go to college or university to learn how to do patch management. There's not courses on backup and disaster recovery. You don't learn this in college. You learn this kind of via MSPs or working in the industry itself. Often you start off as an apprentice, and then you move up the ladders within that organization, or you grow so fast and then you move to another organization as well. But it's not something that you can kind of do over time. So how do you actually ramp up staff, and how do you actually ensure kind of people are able to grow and develop and actually learn things as well? So any form of kind of online training, I'd encourage people to be more active in forums and communities. We have a desperate habit of going into something like Reddit or going on something like Slack when we have our forum, when we have a problem. But how often do we actually just go to these communities and actually share knowledge and actually learn from other people? We don't do a great job of that. So there are things you can do to help accelerate staff upskilling as well. Lots of different vendors out there have lots of great content in terms of boot camps. Here at Enable, we have our Enable U, which is our Enable University, where you can go online and you can do different courses in different areas as such. Well, and actually one of the great features about Enable, here's a plug for Enable U, but as a team lead of a group of techs, for example, you can actually assign courses to individuals within your organization, and then you can track their progress as they move through it as well. So that's one example from Enable. I'm sure different vendors have different or similar solutions as well. So look into these. Look what the partners that you work with and the vendors that you work with today, how can they help with the upskilling? Because it's very difficult to do it just in-house, or send someone off to do a night course or something like that. You need to kind of leverage the providers you're working with to kind of help you with this as well. And then of course, obviously, another big challenge is managing this kind of shift away from the old-fashioned infrastructure that was in four walls. So, we had a building, it had a server room, had a couple of servers, it had a few switches, it had a firewall in there. We had a little, Cat5 network around the office. All the workstations were connected up to it as well. Um, you know, that was relatively easy to manage because everything was contained within a one network as such. Now we have a situation where people work in an office on Monday, work from home Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe work from a collaboration hub on Friday, or work on the move, for example. We're moving around constantly. The data that we access is no longer stored, on a server. It's stored in the cloud, for example. So you need ways of managing these kind of evolving network environments as well. So that kind of challenges that we have to consider when we look at kind of the service offerings that we offer partners moving forward as well.
Yeah, lots to unpack there. Lots of challenges indeed. One more I think we should cover that's certainly a challenge is managing cloud services. I think this is, at this point, not so new of a thing, but certainly maybe, I don't want to say slow adoption rate, but there's still MSPs, companies that are moving to the cloud or moving back, all these different things. How can MSPs tackle kind of just the breadth and depth of managing all these services?
Yeah, I mean, because when we think of the services, first of all, we need to consider things like what do we need to manage? Is it connectivity to the cloud services? Is it the performance of the services in the cloud, for example? Is it access to the cloud services? Is it auditing on the cloud services? Predictive costs obviously is another thing. If you're spinning up virtual machines in AWS or Azure, understanding how much that's going to cost you on a month-by-month basis is very important as well. So, there's lots of solutions out there that can help you with that. Again, from a free plug, we here at Enable have our Cloud Commander solution, which we launched last year, that helps you manage cloud services as well. But there's also things then like Teams management, Office 365 management, for example, creating users, resetting passwords, ensuring MFAs in place, for example. There's loads to consider when it comes to cloud management infrastructure that maybe we didn't necessarily have to contend with when we look at the traditional kind of in-house contained network environment as well. So the solutions that you might have had in the past that worked for managing your kind of on-prem infrastructure don't always necessarily migrate to managing the cloud infrastructure as such. That sometimes it does result in us having to look to alternative solutions that allows us to help with this as well.
Yeah, it's I think almost overwhelming for MSP owners and staff, but certainly necessary and valuable to just check all their bases across
Yeah.
some of these different challenges.
And of course, all this can be done on a phase basis. That's no one has to drop off this call today and say, "Oh, I need to get MDR. I need to have security package offering. I need to get a product in place." You got to look at your customer base today and what are key and what are important to you, and obviously focus on those areas first. This will all come over time. But those MSPs that actually kind of focus on developing their services and moving with the times obviously will continue to be successful. Those ones that kind of say, "Look, I'm going to stick with what works for me," those will be the ones unfortunately that are left behind as well.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully those folks that are looking to not get left behind are in this call today or have attended them in the past. I think, as you alluded to or mentioned, that's one of the best ways to keep up to date on these topics is participate in the community, talk to others. But Paul, let's keep moving. I saw on our list here about some of these trends and opportunities. One was M&A, or mergers and acquisitions. Certainly a exciting word for founders looking for a fat exit. But I think we should talk about that a little bit. I see there's a lot of interest there. What's driving this and what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose those founders that are looking for a fat exit will be delighted to know that 90% of MSPs are now showing an interest to acquire up from 44%. So that means that everyone is in that position to buy, which means it's going to be a very competitive market. So if you're in a position to sell, for example, then you probably have a lot of interested parties out there, which is good news for those founders. But I suppose what mergers and acquisitions does is it expands the MSP. It causes rapid growth in the terms of the size of the business. So when we see a lot of an M&A happening within a particular region, for example, it's a very quick way of becoming a dominant force within that region as well. So, if you have gone out and you've acquired, a business that is obviously in similar size to yourself, or in some cases, what actually I find is fascinating now, smaller organizations are actually going out and acquiring larger MSPs and then becoming a dominant force in a particular area as well. You would think it's the other way around, but those, just because you're a smaller MSP, for example, it doesn't mean that you're not an incredibly well-run MSP, and it allows you to actually, scale rapidly as a result of that as well. But again, if you're in a region, for example, where you're not actively involved in M&A, you're not looking at it, you don't see it as a threat, and then someone or a competitor starts to make a lot of acquisitions, all of a sudden you've gone from competing with kind of 5, 6, 7, like-minded similar organizations to yourself, to actually dealing with a Goliath who can actually, has the infrastructure in place, has more knowledge on board. Depending on the acquisitions they made a focused on specific verticals, for example, that you also operate in, but now they obviously have far more power behind them as well. So it's a really interesting area, the M&A thing. A lot of MSPs often start off as one-man shops and grow over time. Some grow very rapidly, some grow slowly, organically over years. What we've seen in recent years with the result of M&A is that there's, it's really kind of nitro boosted how these MSPs actually grow. And actually, MSPs go from being kind of mom and pop shops to being kind of almost kind of enterprise level organizations a lot quicker these days as a result of this kind of acquisitions as well. So it is an area. It's what I would say. It's something to be aware of, to understand your particular, because it's different from region to region and country to country, Stetson, as well. But you need to know if it's happening in your area. You need to know if people are interested in your area, because if you are, it's great to say people are buying, but if you're looking to sell, you're in a really strong position as well. So don't undervalue your company. If you are looking to sell also, I would also kind of define what differentiates you from others. So make you attractive to being acquired as well. I've seen in kind of reports in the past, people have looked at smaller MSPs and consider acquiring them, and they really only are buying a customer base, and they don't feel it's worth it. But when a smaller MSP offers a skill set or something niche that maybe a larger MSP doesn't have currently in the books, that's what makes you quite attractive to an M&A acquisition as well.
Yeah, or even processes and procedures and things like that, right? I've done
Yeah.
a fair bit of reading on M&A, and there's definitely, I think, ways that any business owner or MSP owner even can make their company more attractive for an acquisition. So there's certainly resources out there. So that's interesting to hear. I think folks should keep their eyes there. I do want to skip a little bit. I saw topic of revenue growth. This statistic said that nearly 40% of MSPs project managed services revenue growth in excess of 20%. What's going on there? Why is this an inflation thing? Why the revenue growth?
I think it's because they are bringing new services to the table, and they're looking at areas that we've kind of touched on this, I suppose, throughout the call today. They're looking at new ways of securing clients' environments, and offer layered security to the environments as well. The market, I think, is also coming to realization that you know doing the bare minimum isn't enough to protect us. You know, we all know what's going on in the world today. We all see the news all the time. I think, you know, end customers are actually waking up to the threats that are out there and actually realizing that they have to budget more money to their IT and their security and their infrastructure. You know, this kind of race to the bottom that we've had in the past, where, you know, I'm going to go to this guy because he's, you know, a dollar cheaper, a euro cheaper than you per device, for example. He might be cheaper, but he mightn't be offering you the same layer of security and services that you're offering as well. So I think kind of now the partners are starting to realize that and are willing to actually budget and spend a bit more than that they have been in the past as well. So it's great to see that the industry is starting to recognize that they're seeing that level of growth out there, because typically, you know, the growth year on year would be somewhere in the 11 to 12%. So, you know, if 40% of the market are actually seeing kind of growth in excess of 20%, that's well above the kind of the market average as well, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a statistic for MSPs to keep their eye on. One more topic here we had, Paul, we should move on to, and maybe you can do some definitions for folks, but it's co-managed go-to-market models. What is this all about?
So I suppose co-managed is a particularly interesting area for me, because it basically opens up the door to a whole new revenue stream for MSPs. You know, we probably have some IT pros on the call today that are responsible for everything within their environment, and you know, that could be very time consuming, like ensuring all the patching is done, ensuring all the EDRs deploy, ensuring all the backups are done, and then dealing with the day-to-day help desk issues that come up when you manage an IT environment as well. What co-manage allows you to do is MSPs can actually offset some of the workload that internal IT departments have, so that frees them up to do other work within their environment as well. So a common example of this, Stetson, might be offering something like co-managed patch. So I, as an MSP, will go to your organization, Stetson, and say, look, you have 500 devices that you have to patch as part of your organization. I will patch them for you. You will have visibility on what I'm doing. You will have guardrails in place to ensure that I'm only doing certain patches that you want, or, you know, we will work with you, but I will do that work for you. Now, I'm not going to remote control your devices. I'm not going to remediate if patches don't install. I'm not going to fix printer issues, anything like that. I am focused on taking this one task that is very time consuming for you off your desk and managing it for you, while giving you the visibility of what I'm doing within your environment, but freeing you up to do something else as such. So, you know, what you can do when it comes to co-managed services, you can start by offering something. You know, what we see a lot of success with partners that offer co-managed services is they will offer one offering, and they will be successful for one offering. And the temptation might be to go in with a kind of an a la carte menu of all your offerings to your customer and say, look, I can do a patch, I can do EDR, I can do backup and disaster recovery for you. But if you can demonstrate that you can do one thing really well, it makes it easier then to actually come back to them and say, you know, now that we're very successful on this, why don't I take something else off your plate as well? So this is a particularly strong area of opportunity for MSPs. It's probably an area that's underutilized because, you know, we're not used, I suppose, as MSPs, we're not used to talking kind of that enterprise level customer as such. And we kind of think, look, you know, I have 1,500 devices today. How can I manage, you know, 2,000 devices from customer A? But if you're just focused on one key area, you can actually, you know, with a good RMM solution, you can actually scale that up very easily as well. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon from Enable. I love being a head nerd. I love what this job affords me. But, you know, if I were to go down the route of maybe going back onto the other side of the fence and actually being in an MSP again, I think this would be an area particularly that I think would appeal to me. If I were to ever formulate my own MSP one day, because I think there's massive opportunities for it. It's an area that I think you can really kind of start differentiating yourself and carve out a niche within your region as well if others aren't offering it as well. Because we went back earlier and we talked about skill shortage, and upskilling. Internal IT departments suffer from that as much as MSPs. And if you can free up resources so they can be utilized elsewhere within an IT department, that's only going to be a benefit for that customer as well.
Yes, I will totally agree there. Definitely very attractive for maybe folks operating in MSP or looking to get into the model. Paul, we covered a lot today, but I think this wouldn't be a stream in 2025 if we didn't talk about generative AI. What opportunities do you see there?
I'm going to use a free plug here. Actually, this is another area that I'm particularly interested in, and we have our Enable Empower session coming up in Berlin in April. So if anyone's interested in attending and joining us there, please feel free to reach out to Stats or myself, and we can see what we can do to get you maybe a little discount. But the topic, I'm going to host a peer-to-peer panel session on AI and automation and how it's obviously transformative. And we're going to actually have 4 partners join me on stage that are going to actually talk about this topic and what they're doing within their organizations to help this as well. I was with a colleague last night, sitting on a patio here in Lisbon, having a nice cold refreshment and a bit of food, and we're talking about AI and use of generative AI and how it can help you within the industry. Sometimes we can be hesitant to use new technology, and something like AI, for example, maybe we're even considering it to be cheating, for example. If I can use AI to do something, like, am I really doing it as such? But the power to know how to use AI properly is very important. And again, it's a skill to actually be able to work with generative AI solutions. I mean, like, I was using a point, if I told you to find a website and you can't use Google, and so you just have to find this website. I said, this way, there's a restaurant in Lisbon that sells a particular fish dish, and it's very famous for it. If you can't use Google or a search engine to find that, you'd never find it. And you have to think of generative AI like that. It's a new technology, but it helps us do things a lot quicker. So if you need to compose a script, for example, you can obviously type it out, and it can be 3, 4, 500 lines long, or you can ask a generative AI solution to do it for you. Obviously, you're not just going to get that script then and deploy it to 100, 200, 500 devices. You're going to do your testing. You're going to review the code. You're going to ensure it does exactly what you want it to do. But you can save yourself hours and hours of work by leveraging generative AI to do that as well. What we're seeing a lot now with customers, for example, is using generative AI to understand the tickets that are coming in and the requests that are coming in from their customers as well, so that they can actually be classified accordingly. You can actually use generative AI to look for keywords within the body of an email, for example. So if it picks up certain information, if it's got a trigger word, for example, that can then be sent to a certain elevated ticketing queue, for example, or maybe it's come in from the CEO or the boss of a particular organization as such. So that helps with that as well. We're seeing more and more AI being brought into products as well, to help around suggested resolutions. So if you have a product today, AI might say, we're detecting this issue within a device. Here are some suggested actions that you can take to resolve this. Would you like me to implement something like this as well? So it's only going to become more and more prevalent. It's also a great opportunity to actually generate content for yourself. If you want to write, content for your web page, you want to post on social, you want to have, a blog or something like that, AI can write stuff for you, but it doesn't obviously make sense if you don't feed it and if you don't give it the right information as such. But actually being able to structure something properly and structure stuff that has impacts is very important as well. So again, I love generative AI solutions. We're seeing more and more of them. We recently actually launched our enabled developer portal, which is really kind of our new solution that helps third parties integrate with our enabled products. But one of the key elements in there is it's got a generative AI scripting engine in it, and it's not just restricted to PowerShell. It can write in multiple codes as well. So you can actually, when you go to the developer portal, you can actually ask, I want a script that extracts a list of my customers from my End Central API, for example, and it will actually generate that code in real time for you. It actually has sample code available for you there as well. So it's a real useful solution to help help us all using these products to get more out of these solutions as well. And I think it demonstrates that AI is going nowhere. AI was a buzzword was it 2023, Stetson, when we first started hearing the likes of ChatGPT and all that kind of
It
stuff.
sounds about right. Yes. Yeah.
And like sometimes these things, they're a fad. You kind of 2-3 years later you tell, oh, remember back then we talked about MySpace or whatever, and they come and they go. But AI is here to stay, and generative AI is here to stay as well. So the sooner you can embrace it and the sooner you can start working with it, the better you will obviously get out of it in the long run as well.
Yeah, totally. And as you were speaking here, I was just doing some Googling, found the Enable developer portal. It has some great documentation on foundational stuff like what is a REST API and central REST API Swagger docs and all these different endpoints that people can hit if they're using Enable, or no matter what platform you're using, right? You can integrate with the API, and you can even use like, what is it, Anthropic API? Some of these, state-of-the-art models, as they're called. I think all of them have an API where you can, just as you use in your browser, you can have a network call that hits this thing, gives it some input, and does different things. So,
And this allows you as well, if you have third-party solutions that you're looking to link to other solutions as well, having that kind of developer portal that allows you to go in and say, look, I'm using X product today, and I want to pull this information from End Central into it. How do I do that? For example, generative AI, helps with understanding that far quicker than you could possibly try and do yourself or manually. Like it takes all the kind of the donkey work, as we say over here in Ireland, out of doing something. Anything that can save time and be more efficient is obviously just going to benefit us all as well.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, Paul, we have covered a lot. I think we're reaching the end of our time here. This has been industry trends and opportunities for MSPs. If you are just dropping in, you can use the same link. There will be a replay available. But Paul, before we drop off, is there anything else you'd like to plug, or where can people reach you to ask about some of these things we talked about?
Yeah, so as I say, my virtual door is always open, Stetson. So my email address is paul.kelly@n-able.com. I'm fortunate enough this week to be spending some time with colleagues, real human beings in an office, but more often than not, I'm stuck at home alone as the family go to school all day. So I'm more than happy to have conversations with anyone that wants my advice, wants to discuss something, has a question or query for me as well. You can also, if you just want to kind of keep abreast of what I'm up to, what events I'm attending, what blogs I've written, what webinars I'm hosting, for example, you'll find me at Head Nerd Paul on LinkedIn as well. They're the two easiest ways of getting access to and communicating with me, I think.
All right. Right on. Paul, thanks so much for joining us. Can't wait to do it again. Hope you have a great rest of your week in Lisbon.
I'm going to go out now and enjoy some fine Portuguese cuisine, and I think after a long day here in the office, and actually this cubicle that started off very, very pleasant has turned into what's like a sauna for the last, I don't think they're designed to sit in for an hour as such, but I think maybe a refreshment or two won't go astray as well. Pleasure as always, Stetson, to talk to you.
Sounds good. We'll see you, Paul, later.
Cheers, guys. Talk to you
Bye.
soon. Bye now.